Well, now, not only is this air show really incredible, one of the best ones in the country, we got a snowbird right over there, but it also marks a very special anniversary for Westover. They're upcoming on their 75th anniversary, so we learned a whole lot more about their history. Take a look.
Well, you're viewing the window of history here today to the chapters of Air Force history. It was built in 1940 on old tobacco fields, and the nation was going through a tremendous economic downturn at the time, and one of the ways that a local businessman brought people back to work here was to put them to work building this base, and that helped bring Chicopee back out of the doldrums of the Depression. It was a base that was prophetically built for World War II. Mm-hmm. It started to be built. These hangars here in front of us were built as World War II was developing, and then we of course were thrust into World War II in 1941, but the original plans called for hangars to go all the way around the side of the whole base, but they couldn't be built because the war's cost took that money away. Well, the whole airfield used to be operated by the Air Force up until 1974, so those nose docks down there, those hangars way off in the distance, used to be where B-52 bombers sat for maintenance, and then just beyond those, around the corner, is the Westover Metropolitan Airport of today, but back then was what's called a mole hole, which is where the B-52 air crews sat 24-hour alert with 5 fully loaded and armed B-52s.
Always ready to go at a moment's notice.
24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 7 crews would rotate in there a week at a time, be a week away from their families frequently through the year.
Now, going forward, how did the building of it progress, and how did it turn into what it is today?
Well, that's a great question. It's had an evolution of that few other Air Force bases can claim. It started out as an Army Air Corps training base and had a small number of bombers and fighters here that trained. As the Air Force realized how vital of a base it is, especially after World War II, the Berlin Airlift really sealed the reputation of the Cold War reputation of Westover. We had a huge airlift operation here that took planes, hundreds of flights over to Germany to help those people in Germany.
And from there, how else did the base develop going forward?
Going forward after that, again, the Air Force realized its strategic advantage with where it is positioned in the Northeast, and the Strategic Air Command came in here. And what you see behind us is still a footprint of what was here back in those decades ago. There were B-52 bombers here as far as the eye can see, all the way down the end of the flight line here, and an immense fleet of air refueling tankers that were positioned to refuel Air Force planes going over the Atlantic Ocean from here.
Let's talk about the C-5 implementation here and how that changed everything.
Well, this airplane holds the distinction in many respects. It's the one airplane that's been here longer than any other Air Force plane. It's been here since 1987. And since it arrived here, they had to reconfigure the flight line to accommodate it because it is the U.S. military's biggest airplane. And when it arrived here in western Massachusetts in 1987, it held the title of the world's biggest airplane until the Russians built one bigger.
Let's talk about some notable things that have happened here, maybe people who have traipsed through these areas.
Well, this just has a unique look to it and a unique mission. There is no other Air Force Reserve base in the nation like it. There are 6 installations across the nation that are owned and claimed by the Air Force Reserve. But this base has its own distinction as a standalone Air Force Reserve strategic airlift mission.
The runway, it's long enough to take a lot of planes to land on. I think Air Force One has been on this strip.
Yes, right over here to our left is one of the longest runways on the Northeast. It's almost 11,600 feet long, and there's a secondary runway too that the pilots use when there's crosswinds, which the crosswinds blow through here pretty good through the Pioneer Valley, mm-hmm. And so the pilots can even use the second runway here, which is 7,000 feet long. You have a who's who of airplanes that have been here, but you also have a who's who of famous people that have been here. Jimmy Stewart, the movie star, he filmed an actual documentary of of the life of a B-52 air crew here. The man himself, who was a retired Air Force Reserve Brigadier General, was here in 1959. We had President Kennedy here 3 weeks before he was assassinated. He was visiting Amherst College. We've had Air Force One in here multiple times. One of my heroes from the military, General Curtis Lemay, was actually stationed here too. He lived up in neighboring Holyoke and commuted down here during just before World War II started, and he was a lieutenant colonel then. And then he came here later as a 4-star general and commanded the entire Strategic Air Command, which owned this base from 1955 to 74. Well, this is the fuel hydrant system, which in layman's terms is an underground very sophisticated underground fuel system that will be used for these huge planes that we have here. obviously you need a good fuel system for these planes because they each hold 52,000 gallons of fuel. So that's a huge demand, and we have this project going on here that's slated to be finished soon. And again, it was 24 million, so no small sum, but an extensive cost required for a large ramp here that's been home to not just the C-5s, but before that the B-52s, which had a previous, much older fuel system.
Take us through Westover today, kind of the day-to-day operation and the place that it holds in the community.
We have an excellent rapport with the community because a lot of our folks, like myself, we live here locally in Chicopee, and we're full-time technicians, so we're almost like the active duty of yesteryear here with the Air Force. We're part of the fabric of the community. We contribute a tremendous amount of economic impact. Last year, almost $225 million, which is a significant sum for an Air Force Reserve base. This is not an active duty base. So we have a really good fabric within the community of Chicopee, our neighboring community.
What do you hope going forward? Because we've talked about the history. What do you think the future might hold?
I think with our strategic advantage of being so close to Europe, Westover is going to be on the map for years to come. There's history through this window right here, and you're seeing it right in front of you.